All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Andrews. I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council, and I'm super excited to have you all join us for our fifth Friday coffee break. We've been doing these coffee breaks for several years now, kicked them off during the very beginning days of the pandemic and have continued with them now on the third and occasionally fifth Friday. We don't always get a fifth Friday. So today we have Ricky and Tiggs with us from the Benton Park West Tiny House Project. They are our featured coffee break guests. And this is just for those who haven't joined a coffee break before, this is a short 30-minute opportunity to take a break from your day and hear from guests about all kinds of different topics. We'll turn the floor over to Ricky and Tiggs in a second, and then we'll have time for discussion. I do want to just say that we are also going to visit their site tomorrow with the Missouri Botanical Gardens Outdoor Youth Corps for a work day. So if anyone's interested in being part of that, they are welcome to reach out to me and I can give you the details. We're going to be hopefully filling some garden beds if it's not too muddy after today. So Ricky and Tiggs are managing the Benton Park West Tiny House Project. Ricky has extensive organic farming and gardening experience and is expert at finding creative ways to reuse materials. And Tiggs has a bachelor's degree in fine arts and a master of architecture degree. He's designed and built custom pieces for private use and businesses throughout the St. Louis area for 20 years. So I'm going to let them tell us about their project. I'm super excited to learn
more. Yeah. So we're in the Benton Park West neighborhood of St. Louis City. And we recently purchased a 7,000 square foot lot from the LRA, the City Land Bank. And Tiggs has design plans to build a 420 square foot tiny house on the lot. And we're going to put 2 small A-frames for the kids. And then the rest of the space will be garden and green space and permaculture. And Tiggs is just sharing a little bit about tiny houses and what it takes to put up a tiny house in the city.
Yeah, just kind of like the, I guess, logistics and technicalities. I guess like just the short and long of it is, does it make sense to build a tiny house? I think in the long term, absolutely it does. Does a tiny house stand alone? No, and I personally think any architecture should be more integrated, as it were. So the permaculture, the garden aspect, the location of the site, the orientation of the house, all of them work together to create this more zoomed out or ecological kind of approach to living. So, whether it be the passive solar gain or the massing of the materials of the house, to the actual how we organize our plant life. So we're gonna do trees that will shed in the winter to let the sunlight in, shade in the summer to actually help with the efficiency of the house, and then implement more permaculture techniques. Like we're going from apple and what do we got, pear trees, and we have serviceberry trees that we're putting in this weekend, some plum trees that go into a hierarchy from that into, we've got figs and elderberries and grapes, which will then even descend down into lower garden beds along the alley side. And the entire lot itself is oriented south. So the house is to the north of the lot, and the garden aspect and almost like an edible forest is what we're putting in at the end of the day, will be to the southern part of the lot, so that again we're taking advantage of solar gain and the passive aspects of building, and then more on the inner workings of the house, like solar solar radiated heated floors. Mass rocket heater is one of the projects that we want to implement. Ricky mentioned a couple of A-frames, which will be like a phase 2 to construct some standalone small structures in the rear of the house, and then move that around into the studio, which will be at the back of the lot at one point. So yeah, it's just like a machine for living, as it were, is the objective. Yeah.
And another piece of it is mediating waste, because there's so many materials that are totally viable for building and art and construction that are just being thrown away. And so a big part of it is using mostly reclaimed materials, and found there's so much in the city, from bricks to utility companies just dump concrete and gravel and lumber. So that's another big goal, is using mostly reclaimed materials for the.
Yeah, there's a lot of construction byproduct, and finding new uses, like the garden beds that we put together for tomorrow are about a cubic yard each, and they're made from white oak slab cutoffs. So when oak is used in quarter sawn form for its figure, there's large waste cutoffs. I mean, we've got 12, 16-inch wide, 2 to 3 inch thick slabs of white oak, which is a really great exterior grade wood that we could put beds together with. And so instead of that material going into the landfill and add into the carbon footprint, we're like able to remediate that and utilize it to a positive effect. But yeah, so that's one example of utilizing materials. And like we have a gang of cinder blocks that at one point we're going to use maybe for construction, that now we'll use for garden beds, for raised beds. We
have several planters that we use reclaimed wine bottles and concrete to build in. Looks really cool, and it's all things that would have been thrown away.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's like, trying to find a way to just utilize your environment that's going to waste to a positive, means and end, but yeah. So that's pretty much the project in a nutshell. But the other part, the big part, is to bring in community to show them some of these techniques, maybe a different perspective about like the living environment that's not off the shelf. I think a lot of times we get honed into what's available, or in the color palette at Home Depot, or on the shelf at IKEA, and it doesn't force us to really take these ideas of sustainability to heart, to upcycle, recycle, and reuse. And a lot of times really amazing opportunities are lost, and just really that base principle of recycle, reuse, or upcycle. And this is really cool opportunity to really test the limits of that idea, and see if we can come up with something really like just sexy. Anyway, so you guys got any questions?
It looks like there is a question from Paul. Are there minimum or, wait, I lost my chat there for a minute.
Are there minimum or maximum square foot parameters that define a tiny house? We were just talking about this morning.
So, I think about a tiny house is one's minimum, their base need, if like you're looking at like the base needs, it's like food, shelter, and security. I hear, I've heard people who have larger houses complain about the energy, it takes to heat and cool them and insure them, and that's great. So like, is that a tiny house for them? No. A tiny house for me might not be the same as it is for someone else's needs. So for me, the definition of the tiny house is very fluid. and really applies to the subjective need of the individual, for us, it was 320 square feet, but it's 420 with a staircase. So, we got a bonus, square footage on that. So yeah, I mean, we've built out a cargo container that's 120 square feet, and it's, got a full kitchen, a full bathroom, and a living room area that will modulate into a living room, and so 120 square foot is a really tiny space by some parameters. But then again, like when we travel, we live out of 30-liter bags and are, going to hostels where you got a cubicle of 32 square feet, because you're in a hostel. So again, like the idea of tiny house, I think, is a very subjective like approach to each individual's needs.
Last summer, we modified a garden shed into a shack cabin. And so it's this little lavender, it's an 8x10 space. It has a little bed and a little desk. And then it opens to a greenhouse that Tig's designed using vintage windows and reclaimed bricks that we just found down by the river. And we spent a lot of time out there in the summer with the kids, and the kids had hammocks in the greenhouse, and we slept in the cabin. And it's just an 8x10 space in our backyard, but it felt like we had the whole world. So every morning you wake up and, the greenhouse just opens into the garden, and there's morning light coming in, and berries and vegetables and herbs and flowers, and it felt really good for us. So
one of those three needs is secure, is shelter, and we have food, so those three basic needs are met. It gives you a little more peace of mind and be more present in the day, and a little more aware of your surroundings. So and I think that's part of the project that we're doing now. It's actually across from our current property. And it's taken that like immersion a little step further, like the cabin into the garden, like bringing the outside into the tiny house and vice versa, and really like expanding that kind of viewport, as it were, and integrating more into it. So
because it's going to be a 420 square foot house, but the lot is 7,000 square feet, which is huge.
Yeah. So it's a fun juxtaposition. Instead of trying to maximize that lot for building as big as we can, we're minimizing that, which has like a lot of benefits, like the energy use, one, tax incentive, like you're paying taxes on 400 square feet, not on 2,500 or 5,000 square feet. You're heating and cooling 400 square feet, not 2,500 square feet, but you still get to utilize and program the 7,000 square feet to your needs. And we're going to have a, fire pit place, a patio with, shelter, like, a little getaway studio space. So like really fragmenting that larger program and the smaller programs that integrate better into the environmental context. It's an experiment too, so we get to have fun and be organic with it. Like if a material doesn't show up, we're like, that's all right, we're not in a rush, like, because again, we're trying to, and that's when are you going to be done? And it takes time to make a house a home. So there is
a permaculture garden, so it's going to take a while before our trees bear fruit.
Yeah, it's more about stewardship than it is about ownership, as it were,
So you all only have like 400 square foot to clean as well, which I'm loving that idea, right?
Like this morning, my daughter left her water bottle over in the lot. She comes back and there's mud and she's dragging it through the entire like apartment. And I'm like, man, come on, I got to mop it from, 40 feet from one end to the other. So it's, literally a quarter of our current space. So yes, cleaning will be a nice, but it also forces you to be more organized, with your spaces. and more conscious about what you bring into your space, you know, because it takes like no time for clutter to build. Like kids come from school, they drop their bags, their shoes, and all of a sudden it's like a tornado exploded, and they've been here less than 3 minutes, you know, and then they're out the door, and you're like, yo, you're tripping on Legos. And so yeah, yeah, definitely forced us to be a lot more conscientious about what we accumulate, you know.
We've got a couple more questions in the chat, actually, and folks can come off mute as well. Is the tiny house off the grid, or just designed very sustainable?
So, you know, again, that's back to that logistics or that code requirement aspect. It's on the grid to function by code, but it has, I guess I'll call like unilateral systems that you can switch back and forth in. Like it's rated to have solar panels, which will be a factor we put in, water collection, filtration systems. Like we have a recycle water system that we're going to install into it so that we can, you know, reuse a lot of the water, you know, our gray water, but then also save on our heating demand, you know, just like with a recycle shower system, you know, and a passive carbon, you know, lava sand filter set up in it with a UV light. That, you know, that little aspect just, it saves so much more, and it allows you to take it off grid. Like I can put in a propane tank and you use a passive heating system, or I can use a solar water system by which to get that passive, you know, heat gain. So yeah, so I would like to say it's off the grid, on the grid. You know, it has to meet code on that requirement, but it will function independently.
Cool.
So yes, yeah.
Daniel, do you want to ask your question?
So how do you balance? Okay, sorry.
Go for it.
Oh,
How do you
sorry.
balance outdoor weather patterns like high heat and freezing temperatures with limited climate controlled spaces?
So one of those to approach that is when you first approach the design. For example, the north wall is fully insulated. It doesn't get a lot of solar gain. The floors are going to be a mixed media of wood and tile, but their subfloor is concrete. And then we have a south glazing wall. So with solar shading, we'll be able to passively get heat gain as we want and release it as we want. That's, say, one aspect. We're going to use rockcrete for insulation in the walls. And then our, you know, our openings or windows or doors will allow us to open the space and passively cool or seal the space. So we by tightening the envelope and responding, i.e. the positioning, how we've positioned it with the glazing versus our insulated walls, we'll be able to modulate that heat gain and loss, as it were. Because I mean, like you say, freezing temperatures are hot temperatures. You know, it's really about, for me, it's the emittance value of the house. So, you know, capturing the energy that I want and modulating how it comes in and out of the space, no matter the temperature swing, is like my objective for the house. And then the mechanical systems would be the radiant heat system. We're going to have a mini split in that, which will be connected to the electrical grid, and then also solar panels. And then the radiant heat system in the floor can also act as a passive cooling system by, say, passing cool water through it in the summer to cool off the concrete space. So it's a limited, you know, heat sink, as it were. So yeah, I guess.
Does that answer your question?
Kind of. Yeah, that's really cool, first of all. Also, I'm curious, like one of the things you mentioned was sort of like having the whole site as a space. So like, do you feel like you lose that additional space when the weather becomes, you know, hostile, for lack of a better description?
Yeah, I
Not
would
necessarily
say like,
hostile, but
Yeah, like no, so for example, like the patios around, there'll be 2 patios around the house that will actually, we're gonna run the PEX tubing underneath and create a radiant heat system under it. So, radiant, and then it's like, a lizard on a rock. They're like, it could be like not their thing, but that rock has so much thermal mass to it that it's really comfortable. So doing a brick patio is what our plan is. Again, remediating, the brick, which is basically, like, terracotta or whatever, which is great for thermal massing, and then running, a radiant system under it. It's going to be a really comfortable space on the coldest of days. We plan on having a greenhouse, like we have a greenhouse in the back, which is a really nice escape place. I mean, it can be 30 degrees out on a sunny day and it feels, really, it's, the comfort zone really works. We'll have a fire pit area, so again, for the coldest days, there's escape areas. And then the hottest days, that's part of implementing a lot of the shade trees. So that will be an additional environmental aspect for the passive heat and cooling of the house, because the plan is to have, shade trees in the south of it during the summer, and during the winter when they shed, we get that solar gain. So using the environment as well to create these climate zones or microclimate zones, I guess is what I'm saying, is one approach to that question.
Go ahead.
I still don't see our living spaces limited to just our house. I mean, we live in an incredible city. We have libraries and museums and swimming pools and ice skating rinks. There's lots of places to get out and get around.
That's actually of great. I have a follow-up question. That's a great segue. It sounds like for you guys, the quality of the space is more important than the quantity of the space, right? But I'm wondering if, and this is, I guess, thinking beyond your particular project, your particular site, does that high quality value proposition really scale to a dense urban development? Could you do lots of tiny houses in dense urban development, or do you risk falling into like a favela sort of development pattern? How can you avoid that?
Well, I kind of feel like with our experience that a project like this has to be done on volume. Like I don't think the average individual can walk in and do this project. It's taken literally like 10 years to acquire the lot. It's taken me 20 years of school and working in the different fields, failing constantly here and there to learn like, oh, whoa, there's a more effective, more efficient means of doing this. So for somebody that's never done it to walk and be like, hey, I'm gonna just build this house right here on this lot. And no, I mean, there's engineers, there's craftspeople, like plumbers, electricians, like, there's a huge network of community and people that are coming around to make the project happen. So I feel that if it was scaled up, it was a larger social project, as it were, or community project, that say went to North City and we're going to buy this large plot. We're going to have, say, a team of whatever architects and engineers. And, when I say architects, not just like, let's build buildings, but landscape architects, people that are going to integrate their environments. Because the idea is for the environment to support the people, not, the people just working constantly to acquire, aesthetic. So I think this project on a large scale will be more beneficial for the people as a whole. I think, like, for example, a segue between a large construction company that's building a high rise, dude, they're going to have 10-20% waste factor. 10-20% waste factor might mean 20 or 30 tiny homes. You know what I mean? When the materials are reconstituted and reallocated and utilized properly. So I think it can trickle down and actually, really like remediate and have a really cool little micro economy within the larger building economy. So yeah.
I also have a question. I don't know if I'm muted or unmuted. I'm new to Zoom here.
We can
Yeah.
hear you.
Hear you.
Okay, cool. Like, and this is a lot more basic than the last question. But like getting into the space that you guys are at, I know it took some years of like, you know, school and, you know, experience and stuff like that. But to someone that, you know, is one of the internet researchers and I'm really into it and I've done a bunch of research, but haven't had the actual experience or schooling for it. And I'm transitioning into you know, the sustainability field. Like, what do you suggest? Like, you know, how did you guys make that bridge into making your passion, your life work, basically? So like, how do you get into that space? I don't know if my question's very clear, but.
Yeah, no, like that path, you want to, I guess for me, it's like kind of two parts, like in undergrad and stuff, like I was a trim carpenter, you know, and a cabinet maker. And I found myself, you know, really in this regurgitative, repetitive state of just going in and tearing beautiful, like craftsmanship out of houses and replacing it with, you know, the kitsch standard, and just seeing the amount of waste and the time and the energy, both emotionally and financially, that these people are investing into, ultimately for them was this temporary happiness. So for me, like, sustainability is this idea: how do I get this contentment with the happiness, fulfillment, as it were? And it's not in trying to solve my problems by just acquiring the new style. For me, the path to the sustainability was acquiring my own virtue and style. You know, like, what's going to make me happy? Do I need the rose gold handles right now? No, but can I take some time to learn how to make them? That'll be more enriching for me. Like, you know, like I make the example about cold brew. Like, yeah, you know, like, man, I won't go buy cold brew, but I will take 3 days to make it. You know, and so for me, like, I guess I like the enrichment is the process of being the maker, of the craftsman, and filling the terroir and the soul of the process. I guess that's my sustainability. Yeah,
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
all right.
Any other questions? I actually have kind of a fun one. I want to know what the wackiest, like, reclaimed object you have on the site, like, that you're incorporating into the house.
Oh man, a gal gave us a horseshoe the other day. She's like, "Here, you can put this on something." Oh man,
Messaged me on Instagram. They heard about the project, and she said, "Oh, I just broke my a plate. It's a really nice plate. Do you want it for your house?" And I was like, "Oh, that's really nice. But I don't know if I want to drive to your house to pick up your plate. Maybe you can make a mosaic with it." And that's part of the project, is like inspiring other people to use their reclaimed materials and their broken things to make their own art and projects.
Yeah, we're still pretty early in it, like, because, you know, we just got the foot in, but like, even doing the forms, you know, I was passing by a dumpster and there's like 2-foot shorts all day long, just piles of them. I'm like, well, let's make that work. And so we built all the concrete forms for pouring the foundation out of 2-foot shorts and a 40-yard dumpster. You know, so like, as the project builds, that's kind of the thing that, like, yeah, the plate will totally come in handy when we're doing the large mosaic, you know, in the bathroom and stuff. You know, it might be a Zippo lighter laid into the wall somewhere. You know, it just, yeah, it just really depends. You know, Whole Foods was throwing out all kinds of stuff from like displays. And so we built a fence out of shelving that would normally be in the milk carton, you know,
Those little
freezer.
mirrors.
Yeah, and
Nice.
So the kids love running up and you can touch it and it makes noise.
yeah, they come up and they're all like, "Oh." Yeah. So yeah, so I think that was a fun one, just like, utilizing those kind of things to repurpose them to like it's a security gate now instead of a fence. Yeah, we have a good portion of that shelving, like metal shelving that, we'll take and cut it up, re-weld it back together and create a partition or a horizontal plane or something, like it's all all usable. I had one of my ideas I'd like to do one day is like to do a roof out of like appliance sides, and just do a shingled roof out of like washer and just stove sides, all porcelain, like be really kind of cool. One of the ideas I saw the other day was they took the terracotta tiles for a roof and they sliced them and then stacked them and created a wall. And then you're like, well, man, that's a really great thermal massing wall right there that would have some really cool, maybe passive, wind effects as it passes through, like kind of like a coil on the back of a refrigerator. You know what I mean? So I got a buddy that's getting rid of a bunch of terracotta tiles. I'm like, yo, man, let me get that pile of terracotta tiles. So, yeah, like every material has like some unique, like, application to it. You take the time and like, oh, what can we do with this? We have like a dozen 8-inch, 20-foot, no, 15-foot tubes, like sewer flat drain tubes. I'm like, been selling these things for like a year, and I'm like, these might make a cool log cabin. So we might be building a log cabin out of like drain tubes.
Amazing. Well, we are at our 30-minute mark, so I want to honor the time that we've allotted today. But I want to thank Ricky and Tig so much for being our guest today. I'm super excited to learn more about your project and to visit again tomorrow. If anyone's interested in joining that workday, you can reach out to me. And I do want to point out a couple upcoming events that we have or opportunities. Our education committee is always in the works of planning out presentations, and both on Zoom and in person. So we actually have a quarterly call for proposals, and the next deadline is Monday, April 3rd. So if you submit something by that deadline, our committee will review it the next day at their committee meeting, set for either something later in the year or in 2024. And then we have an emerging professionals happy hour scheduled next week on April 6th at Four Hands at 4:30. Ian, you were kind of talking about how to get into the sustainability space. This might be a good opportunity to meet some of our other members, and I can follow up with more information to you after this. But all are welcome at those. And then we have our regular evening programs are on the second Tuesday. We'll be in person at Alberici on April 11th, talking about greener building materials and the AIA materials pledge. So that'll be a good program to check in on. And again, thank you so much, Ricky and Tiggs. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll stay safe from any terrible storms today. So good luck, everybody, and happy Friday.
Awesome. Thank you, Ricky and Tiggs.
Thanks.
Emily.
Appreciate it, guys.
Bye-bye.
I'm excited to see the results.
Yeah, come on through.
Yeah.